So, despite all of the 6 new pillars of invention, or whatever they are, Keir Starmer's not going to mention immigration today because apparently he doesn't fancy putting a cap on it because he doesn't want to give it a number.
No, well, he's not going to mention it because he's in the gravy, as we just heard.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, quite honestly, this government, I mean, on borders particularly, but we've seen it, and I think it's been discussed in the recent weeks. This government has come in, the Labour Party has come into government without actually having any plan. None of their plans have been costed, and their plans are pretty non-existent. They didn't know how they were going to do things, which is one of the reasons they're going to spend a whole load of money on a whole load of sort of talking shops to try and figure out what they're going to do to implement some of the policies that they promised that they would deliver. So they don't know how they're going to do this. And we're seeing it in immigration. We're seeing it in borders. We're just seeing a chaotic sort of series of statements that actually are pretty meaningless.
But the point is they said that they were ready. You know, I've got a clip which I can show you right now. And this is what he said before he got elected.
We've prepared this party for government. We've prepared all of our departments for government. If we are privileged to come in to serve our country, it will be public service for me, as it always has been, not self-entitlement.
Except he hadn't prepared for government. He's also, remember that phrase, fully costed, Henry? Everything was fully costed, they told us, right? So all of that was BS, basically, frankly.
Absolutely. And look, you know, they're busy sort of talking about cracking down on the gangs. They're sort of all of these things that they want to do. And we're seeing that play out in little snippets. There is no plan. They're doing, you know, they're trying to sort of grab a few low-hanging fruit and getting nowhere with it. One of the first things that we know, just to remind people, they did was cancel the Rwanda plan. Now, I said there were a lot of flaws in the Rwanda plan, and on that I agreed totally with Robert Jenrick. The legislation was drafted in such a way that there was always going to be a loophole in it. But in principle, now, or the previous government at least had some sort of idea as to what they were going to do with people who came into this country and were denied asylum, people from Iraq, from Iran, from Syria and from Afghanistan, countries with which we have virtually no diplomatic contact whatsoever and certainly no ability to return people there. So what do you do with these people if they come to our shores? You can't send them back. Now we can't send them to Rwanda. We have absolutely no choice but to keep them here. That's the present situation. So this isn't thought through at all, Mike. And in the meantime, we've got foreign nationals who are committing offences, which Rupert Lowe from the Reform Party, MP, done some excellent work on trying to draw out the figures from the Home Office there. You know, the figures for the number of offences caused, committed, not only by foreign nationals, but foreign nationals who've been deported and then returned to the UK is absolutely, it's scandalous.
Yeah.
And at the moment, we've seen no response from the government as to what they're going to do about that whatsoever, because they don't have an answer, because they don't have a plan, Mike.
No.
And one of the things in borders that you've got to have, having helped numerous countries around the world on this, you have to have a plan that reaches across all relevant government departments, that creates unity of effort to achieve a set of very, very clearly stated goals. But you're not going to have clearly stated goals if you've got a failure of leadership, which is what we're seeing here, and in the previous government, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, the previous government hasn't really got anywhere to go either, because they were the ones that caused all these people to come here in the first place by changing the rules. I mean, I heard a story yesterday which will make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Tony Smith, a guy who you probably know, was talking to us about some of the work that he sometimes had been continuing to do with Border Force, and he said last year one of his colleagues just said, I'm not going to do this anymore, helping out during the summer, because he had to deal with one particular case, which I can only assume was a legal case of people who came here legally, probably on a plane. 3 women from Nigeria who had come here to be carers, right? They'd brought their husbands with them who were legally entitled to come in, and that was another 3 people, and they, between them, had 15 children. So there was 21 people coming in on 3 work visas to work as carers, which would not be creating much tax revenue, I shouldn't think, for the government, if any, and yet they were creating, basically, another 18 dependents.
Indeed, and it gets worse than that, Mike, because if these people, for example, they've come in on a care visa or a work visa of any sort, then in most countries, you will find that when you lose that job, that job for which you were given a visa to come in and work for, when that work ends for whatever reason, then your visa ends. You leave. But in the United Kingdom, we have this thing where you basically, the default position is if you've been in the UK for 5 years, then unless there's a damn good reason why not, you're given sort of almost permanent right to remain in the UK. And therefore, so do all of these, in this case, 18 people.
Yeah.
There is root and branch reform. I mean, we need to start again with our borders and our immigration. Stop tinkering about with it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem here. All we're seeing from the previous government, I'm not letting them off the hook, but this one as well, is tinkering. We're seeing these little bitty policies, these little bitty ideas, and absolutely no strategic grasp of the problem at all. No comprehensive approach.
No.
None.
And meanwhile, they're sort of only now beginning to at least perhaps acknowledge that some immigration might not be good for the country. I mean, we've been saying it for years. You know, suddenly politicians in Westminster are waking up to the fact that actually not all immigration is good.
Yeah, but they're waking up to it very, very slowly, Mike. And then, what are they going to do? This government particularly has already demonstrated a propensity towards, well, OK, if there's a problem, let's have get some people together. Let's do a consultation on it. Let's get all this sort of input from God knows where. That takes a month of Sundays. At the moment, this country, the British public, faces existential problems, crises right now, with housing, with the rule of law, with health service, with policing. The whole shooting match is falling apart largely because of immigration.
Yeah.
And yes, they're waking up, Mike, but only some of them, and very, very slowly.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
as I say, the work that Rupert's doing, Rupert Lowe, and others, and Tony Smith, and I try as well. We've got to keep banging this drum because we've got to wake these damn people up because we're all suffering as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more.